Thank you for tuning in to Exeter TV. The meeting will be starting shortly. While we wait, let's learn more about Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast channels 98 and 22. Channel 98 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 13, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Biweekly Report with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well. Thank you for tuning in to Exeter TV. The meeting will be starting shortly. While we wait, let's learn more about Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast channels 98 and 22. Channel 98 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 13, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Biweekly Report with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well.
Open this meeting of the Exeter Planning Board of March 23rd, 2023, and start with introductions. I'm Langdon Plummer, I'm chairperson, and to my left is?
Nancy Belanger, I didn't know which one were you looking at.
The other list.
Nancy Belanger, Select Board Representative.
And?
Gwen English.
Okay, board member and?
Pete Cameron.
Clerk?
Oh, clerk, yeah, Clark.
And Clark the clerk. And?
Jen Martell.
Thank you, Jen. So we have 4 people, so we have a quorum. And I'm not sure that we have enough people to do the minutes tonight.
What minutes are these?
We could do that.
I have to abstain because I wasn't at the meeting.
Oh, good.
There's 2 sets of minutes.
Right.
Then I will table the minutes of January 26 and February 9 to our next meeting.
I only got one set.
Well, it was,
They're just back to back, I think. They're in this,
January
Oh.
26th and
13. Just the next one.
okay. Yes, no, in fine print?
4, 23.
Well, I didn't get the printed copies, they're all.
it might be this one.
there's extras here probably.
I have
there's
extras
there's
here
more
too,
here.
so I
Yeah,
printed my
there.
own.
Did you need some, Pete, or are you all set?
That's all right, I'm not.
Because there are two extras, there's two extras, well, there's an
January
extra set.
26th.
You can have, you have Aaron set, he's
And
not here.
February 9th?
I beg your pardon, here is for
Okay.
February 5th, I'm sorry.
We have a few extras.
All
So,
right.
I'm going to, excuse me, table those. And move on, there being no public hearing scheduled, the board will conduct a work session on land use regulations. And I see on the screen, we have land use planning series,
Epping Road?
envisioning Exeter's future. I believe that has to do with our planning director, Mr. Sharples.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As discussed via email, can we kind of take the agenda and go to chairperson's items and talk about the NHDOT letter for a second? Because it's just more informational than anything else, but I got this letter. I thought I'd share it with the planning board as it was connected to a planning board case and kind of explain it and what's happened and what we've,
Okay.
about it. So have you all had a chance to read the DOT letter? Okay. Well, it's regarding the Gateway development, and in their letter, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it does say, well, let me get back up. The planning board approved it. Let me back up to August 20th, 2020, about, 2.5 years ago or so. The planning board approved it. And at that time, we had the traffic impact analysis peer reviewed by our third-party reviewer, VHB, Jason Plord from VHB. He reviewed the traffic impact, and we were in contact with New Hampshire Department of Transportation, which is NHDOT. So we were in contact with them, VHB was in contact with them because they were, interested in this project and the potential effect it had on Exit 9. And because they own, their state right-of-way begins at Cronin Road. So if you're at the All Town on Epping Road, the gas station there, and then there's Cronin Road right there that goes back to a property back there, there's a house back there, and there's like a dumpster rental place right there. That's basically where that is where the state right-of-way begins, and our urban compact, it's called, begins going south. State owns north, and the interchange and Route 27, I don't know how far, but through Exeter, past the high school anyway. I don't know what the situation is in Brentwood, but they own the state right away. So they indicated to VHB that they would like to be involved in the process of, weighing in on the access points that are in the urban compact. And I did wonder if they had any jurisdiction on that, but VHB suggested the condition number 13, which I provided, the applicant shall submit a letter of approval of the access points from NHDOT prior to signing the final plans. They also suggested condition 14, VHB, but that's not about this. So 13, it says, shall submit a letter of approval. And this was kind of in reaction to some conversations we had with DOT. And so they were involved, they got the traffic impact analysis and so forth. Then probably about a year and a half ago, the Gateway development started to move forward and wanted to schedule a pre-construction meeting. And I went through the conditions of approval as I always do and say, well, where's, 13 and 14? They hadn't provided information on that. So Jim Petropoulos, through the letter, I got a copy of the letter, as you notice. It wasn't made out to me. It was sent to the design engineer. And I said, where's that letter? And he's like, well, I've been trying and I've been asking DOT for a letter and they have not responded. And he sent me the transmittal of that and the letter he sent requesting their, referencing this condition and referencing the condition and asking, if they would provide a letter. And I called them, District 6, and spoke with them, and they told me that no letter's forthcoming. we're not sending a letter, basically because we don't have jurisdiction. We can't approve access points or deny access points within the urban compact. So I was like, okay, no letters forthcoming. I may or may not have run this by the chair, I don't remember, and he doesn't either. So, I mean, usually stuff like this, I'd probably, because he comes in and signs the final plans.
Yep.
Lang signs the final plans, so usually he's like, hey, this is what happened, and this is what I'm telling you now, that I said, if I did, or I made the decision, I said, well, condition number 13 is moot. You cannot enforce this condition because DOT doesn't have jurisdiction and no letter. You can't just hold up a project indefinitely on something, and they verbally told me, and the applicant had asked, and they didn't get one. So we moved on, and we signed the final plans. And then then it kind of went dark again for a while because they went through the Invest New Hampshire process to get a grant to build workforce housing. There was a lot of money that was put out there through the Invest NH program to construct affordable housing. So the Gateway developer, took advantage of that and submitted, and so that kind of stopped the process, but he was awarded a grant several months ago, and now he wants to move forward with the project, and he schedules a pre-con meeting, and the day after he schedules a pre-con meeting, I get this email with a letter that wasn't forthcoming, was 2.5 years later. So I was a little surprised by it, and I sent an email back to DOT telling them that. I said, I'm a little surprised getting this. I spoke to you folks, and you said no letter was forthcoming, and you didn't have jurisdiction, which they admit they don't have jurisdiction in this letter. I mean, they say, since the proposed driveways are located outside of District 6 jurisdiction and within the urban compact, a driveway permit will not be issued by DOT for this project. So they have no jurisdiction. They can't approve or deny the access points. So I consider the condition satisfied, but in the letter, they go on and they say they don't support this project because of the additional volume of traffic that it's going to put on Exit 9. I was also a little, I don't know, maybe frustrated is the word, with DOT. So we met downstairs in the wheelwright room with a couple of folks from District 6 on Tuesday. And I will briefly explain what I explained to them. When I got here in 2016, the town had just recently passed the TIF district on Epping Road. And they were going to put extend water and sewer up from Continental Drive up to Cronin Road. And, development, and there was a lot of pressure to put residential development in that area. And the mayor, I've already received a variance from the zoning board to do so. So I knew that there was a lot of development coming, and also our economic development director was, working with several developers on Continental Drive to add additional development and commercial space there. So I said, at that time, I was like, we need to look at Exit 9. We don't own it, but we want it to be safe, because it's not very good right now. There's a lot of traffic. There's, tough left turn out of there during peak hours. I don't know exactly what the level of service is, but it needs some improvement. So 5 years ago, we set up a meeting with the DOT, and there was a scoping meeting on this project on Continental, but it was also the larger picture. And we provided them a map of all of Epping Road and what we thought was the potential for development on the individual parcels. And we had 200 units, a little block, 200 potential units on Gateway, because that was being discussed. There was 116 units over here. There was 400,000 square feet of commercial space. There was Unitil, 65,000 Unitil headquarters. All the development. There was a grocery store we envisioned possibly going, off of where Ray Farmstead Road is. Possibly. We just kind of threw it all out there to say, hey, this is a law. So we want to get on the same page with DOT. We don't own the right of way. So what do we do? This is not safe now. There's a lot of users on it. We're just going to add more development. We need to work together to, fix this intersection. Basically, they said to us, really, there's no funding. And we need a corridor study. So they wanted a corridor study. They suggested we should have a corridor study. So we went back to the voters, I think in 2019 or 2020, back to the voters and revised, that was for the light at the TIF. No, we determined that the original TIF article that passed via town warrant article would allow us to conduct a corridor study with the TIF funds. That's right.
Yeah.
So we went out and we hired VHB and spent $125,000 on a corridor study that went from exit 9, both on ramps, westbound, both on and off ramps, westbound and eastbound, all the way to Brentwood Road. So we took a look at that entire corridor, and we looked at all the potential build-out, and they came with some like short-term, mid-term, long-term improvements and sketched them all out with different options with roundabouts and lights. And, the cross-section that they recommended that would be needed based on full build-out was quite extensive. I mean, it was like a 4-lane highway in both. It was like an 8-lane cross-section with, bike lanes and side. And it's just like, there was a lot of property impacts associated with it, but we're like, okay, let's take it piece by piece here, and but we got that I'm getting off a little bit off the thing. We got the corridor study, and then we provided that to DOT, and still really not much traction. And I kind of vented a little bit my frustration about that at this meeting. I said, we've been trying to get you to the table to work with us to figure out how we improve, because we can't do it. We don't own it. It's not our right of way. So the meeting came out, and it was good, because the next steps are they said they'd bring in community and planning assistants and get them to the table about possible funding and kind of have the conversation move forward. So that's a kind of a long background story, but we were working with them, and then they send this letter of support, and I basically told them, I said, we've signed the final plans, you don't have jurisdiction, there's nothing we can do about this at this point. I mean, they are moving ahead, but I think the goal, at least my goal, is how do we make improvements to exit 9 so all the users and future users and current users are, is a safe situation.
Yeah.
So hopefully those conversations will continue, and we'll get some forward movement on, some improvements to those interchanges. So I thought it was important enough that we get this DOT letter about a planning board, so I'd be happy to answer any questions. Do you have any comments that you might have? I just felt it was something that, I'd rather let you know about it and what I did and what transpired, then, it comes out somewhere else. So I thought, my obligation was to let the planning board know of what transpired.
Well, it seems to me there is some improvement right along there for the entries and exits into that gateway project. So that piece of 27 is being taken care of for now. I don't know if that's going to need additional work in the long range.
No, it is, right. So that's another part of the TIF. We've almost fully designed. It's almost ready. We should be going out, and we should have final plans pretty soon. I mean, I'd expect construction in the next year or two to be, that we're making significant improvements from Cronin Road to the lights. That includes some center turn lanes, and left turn lanes, and so forth. So we're doing what we control. But that is nothing beyond that.
Right.
There's nothing in the state right away. We're just trying to get them to the table to, see what needs to be done to their section.
I just wanted to point it out. It's just not 2 driveways put in the way it is.
No.
No, not at all. Yeah.
No, and that's in the conditional approval. If we don't, the TIF's expected to do some of those, but if they don't, if the TIF for some reason, DIF district or that project stalls or whatever reason, and they're looking for a CO, then they're responsible to make those improvements to mitigate their entrances on Epping Road.
Okay.
I mean, they're not going to be responsible for all of what we're doing, because we're doing a center turn lane all the way down to, I think, the lights, and then they wouldn't be, but it's spelled out in the condition of approval pretty specifically on what they would need to accomplish with some decel lanes and a dedicated, left turn lane into the project.
So any questions from anybody?
I have one, and it's probably silly, but I've read the same sentence over and over again. It is noted at this time no improvements have been proposed at the New Hampshire 101 intersections by either the project proponent or the town of Exeter to mitigate the impacts of the proposed development. we can't do improvements? Or can we?
Hence the frustration.
Okay, thank you.
Hence, yes, I mean.
I don't understand that sentence. If we can't make those improvements, and it's their responsibility, yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay?
Glad I was.
Yeah, I mean, they told us, no, they'd put it, if it was theirs, they'd put it on the developer. And I was like, well, that's kind of the last to the party, thought, the last person that puts it over the threshold that, is to pay for all the ills in the first 12,000 cars, that the development that created the first 12,000 cars didn't have to pay anything.
Yes.
And I said, and they were like, well, that's the way we do it. And I said, well, we can't do that. That's illegal for towns to do that. We can do, and I explained to them what an exaction is, and an exaction is a proportional share of your impact. It can't be the entire thing. So we could determine that there's, $5 million worth of improvements, and you're adding 10%, then we can do an exaction of 500,000, not 5 million. So we got to come up with the other 4.5 million to do the project anyway. You can say the project's not going to go forward unless the improvement's completed, so it gives them the option to build the whole improvement, but you cannot require them to build the whole improvement. And then the effect of that, usually with developments of this size, they'll just go away. They won't go forward. Usually when you can do a project like that, you have a massive project, like, the Tuscan Village in Salem. I don't know if anyone's seen that, but the offsite improvements, millions of dollars offsite improvements aren't, can be wrapped into that project because of the numbers. And, Unitil and, those places, aren't going to be able to support the kind of improvement that is needed. And I would argue the improvements are needed now before they even.
That's a problem.
So can this
so-
affect any future development in that area?
No, I mean, it will from a safety standpoint, not this, but I just want to get DOT to the table, and I want us to figure out how do we move forward and get needed improvements to exit 9. How do we do that?
Takes a lot of time.
It does. Well, when I first got on the TAC, and I didn't want to, I went through that side, it's like, I've been through that before. You put in the long-range plan, which is the, 30 years out. And then, 28 years from now, you get a project. I thought it was a little more timely than that. I was like trying to get it, so I thought it needed a little more immediacy, even though I've been telling RPC but finally, I think we got some traction. After that meeting the other day, we're supposed to get a meeting and we'll set it up, so. That's the goal.
So RPC is involved with this process?
Yes, they actually helped me because I kind of went on a rant at a TAC meeting a few months ago about this very same issue before we even got this letter, because Federal Highway and Planning and Assistance and DOT was on that Zoom. So I just saw it as an opportunity to just let it, can we get people to the table and start looking at this that need to look at it, because I felt like Exeter, we don't have jurisdiction over it. And they said, we submitted some road safety audits. There's some road safety audit money. A little bit. It's not much.
I don't know how much.
Yeah, they'll do an audit, and then doing that might open up the door for additional funding to do something. So I did that. We submitted road safety audits on that, on those interchanges, and a couple others in town that, we thought, that fit the bill for a road safety audit. So.
Have there been accidents on either of those exits?
Oh, yeah. That's our.
And that always, that kind of bumps you up, I think, on the list.
Yes,
if there have been for the safety of.
Yes, they're concerned of serious injuries. So they want to see serious injuries or fatalities.
Fatalities, that's right.
There hasn't been any fatalities at that one, but, and it was hard to get the data.
And we're not looking forward to those either.
No, I mean, what a metric to have, right? Somebody has to be seriously maimed or die to get.
But
anyway, VHB did when they did our, the intersection improvements program that was in the CIP and that, the voters voted on, and it's a capital reserve fund, and we've been adding to it and so forth, and actually there was a couple of projects, the roundabout and some improvements over on Winter Street. When we did that, we tasked VHB with examining all intersections in town. And they had one chart about what the number of crashes, I think over a 5-year, whatever period it was, and the total number of crashes, that's the number one intersection. The westbound off-ramp. So if you're coming from Hampton, exit 9, westbound, you're heading westbound, you take a right, that intersection at the end there, that is the number one intersection as far as number of crashes
Okay,
of any intersection in Exeter. So
okay.
it's definitely up there.
Doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, the
doesn't surprise-
delays that they speak of are, to take a left turn onto Epping Road are considerable. Yeah,
Yes.
and then I
Don't
think people
even
just get
go that way.
I was there
frustrated.
today.
Not easy.
10 minutes.
Yeah,
So right now, the only thing this is affecting is the Gateway project. It's not going to affect any potential project.
I don't think this affects anything.
You don't think it affects the Gateway? They can still,
No, we signed the final plans. DOT does no jurisdiction. I said, why did you even send this letter? Because they told me they weren't sending a letter, but then they didn't send a letter of approval or denial. They sent this.
said, "I don't like
They
it."
said, they don't have jurisdiction, but they don't support it. They said they just wanted to be on record for not supporting it.
Okay.
And I'm like, but it's your right of way.
Yeah, what's their incentive? What is going to be the incentive to get DOT to do something?
Well, that's what I'm working on. Hopefully, all we want to do is just get to the table and try to figure it out. Because we don't have jurisdiction over it, and we need to be partners with them to figure something out. So, I think that meeting started it, that meeting Tuesday, and we'll have a meeting with community and planning assistance and see where it goes.
well, good luck.
So, yeah.
And thank
So we don't need to take any action. We're
Nope.
just aware that it's taking place, and they, the developer, are online now to,
And they're moving forward, they're
Moving ahead
moving
with their
forward.
meeting?
You're gonna start seeing
They're already
some-
out there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, they were out there, they're not,
they're
just
cutting.
clearing, just cutting. Yeah.
Okay.
They got an intent to cut,
yeah.
so, yep.
Thank you, Dave. Any other questions or comments? I didn't mean to deny the good people behind the back here.
No?
no, I just
Okay.
appreciate hearing the background of all
Yeah.
of that, because I do drive that several times a day, and
It'll only get worse.
Page
it's
2.
it's been getting worse, and I think it's, I know this is a frustrating process, but if it gets something started, then.
Yeah.
And it confirms what Pete, especially you, have been very
He's a traffic
vocal
guy, yeah.
about the traffic, and I
Oh,
think
yeah,
it
well,
confirms that
This is-
we're all
this-
concerned and we have a reason to
This
be.
did ring some bells, that was serious concern.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay, Dave, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Okay.
To continue.
So welcome to the Exeter Planning Series. I called it Envisioning Exeter's Future. It's not a master planning project, it's more about review of regulations, but the regulations at the end of this, you'll hopefully, I'm sure you do already to some extent, or hopefully a little more, how regulations affect the built environment. So as I said before, we're going to start out, the first part of the series is basically starting from scratch and looking at an undeveloped piece of land. Before land gets developed, it's meadow, it's, meadows, it's a meadow, it's a forest, it's whatever different types of forest, hemlock forest, pine forest, what have you. So what does the benefits of those provide? And I think this is a good exercise, and it's pretty short. I try to make these short and digestible, and then we'll see how it goes, and then see how people talk afterwards and how engaged we are. So and then I'll adjust them accordingly, maybe add more information than tonight. But I got about a dozen slides to go over. So I thought I'd start with what benefits does undeveloped land provide? And these are kind of the big ones, and it might be repetitive for most of you, but I kind of got basic, and also for the public to watch these as a series and kind of could go through them and binge watch them someday and learn all about land use in Exeter. So it provides flood protection, and I'm going to go over each one of these has its own slide.
Okay.
Flood protection, water and air quality, wildlife habitat, recreation, biodiversity, regulates temperature, low cost to the tax base, minerals, materials for things we use every day, and the social aspect, kind of emotions. So flood protection. sometimes I'll use like think of it, in contrast to maybe a developed site or a parking lot. So when land is undeveloped, say trees, vegetation, what have you, and when it rains, a lot of that vegetation, trees, leaves, everything, water holds on to it. It never hits the ground. It's like a large, everyone's been on a pine tree. Like you ever walk under a pine tree after it rains and you hit it and you just get soaked. It's just like a gallon of water dumps on you. Because it's held up. It never even reaches the ground because it just sits on the mass of the leaves, the needles, what have you, and it holds quite a bit of water. Trees hold quite a bit of water. So that never hits the ground. It never runs to the nearest stream, so it doesn't add to the flooding. So vegetation provides water storage. Vegetation uptakes water from the soil. So as it gets into the soil, it grabs the soil and it dries out the soil between rains. So when this moisture left in the soil, the vegetation takes it up. So when it rains, if that soil was saturated, there would be no place for the water to infiltrate, so it would find the nearest receiving water body into the brook or stream and raise the level of that stream. So the fact that the vegetation pulls that water out of the soil and dries out the soil, then the new water lands on it and it sucks it in because it has a place to go. It has a place to absorb, where if it was saturated, it wouldn't otherwise. And wetlands hold water. Wetlands are usually low-lying, depressions that usually can expand and contrast without really overflowing. A lot of, some have outlets, but a lot of them don't. And, so it kind of just raises up. It might go up into the surrounding forest and so forth. And, probably everyone's seen that. And then it, slowly decreases. So it doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't leave. It just stays there, and it's a puddle. And then it slowly absorbs back into the soil and recharges the groundwater. So it infiltrates. And then there's very little or no impervious surface areas in a natural environment. I mean, you got some bedrock out there, but, everyone's taking a walk in the woods. There's not a lot of impervious surfaces out there. And impervious surface area, when it lands on impervious surface, there's no tree to catch it. It lands on impervious surface. It, in a hot day and the soil and the pavement's hot, some of it can evapotranspirate. I think we've all seen that after a storm or thunderstorm. You see that kind of, it's almost like a mist on a parking lot. That's usually the evapotranspiration leaving, but they're usually slanted, so most of that water just goes right off and into the receiving water body. So flood protection is a huge advantage to a benefit. Water and air quality. The natural environment absorbs pollutants. And one example, the soil absorbs water, and within the water, and binds to elements that can cause harm to the environment if concentrated. For example, everyone's heard about nitrogen in Great Bay or phosphorus in freshwater bodies. Phosphorus causes, algae blooms and so forth, and nitrogen in Great Bay. I mean, and some people think, well, nitrogen and phosphorus, they're natural elements. I mean, they're all in the elemental chart. They're a natural occurring element. But anything in excess can become a threat to something. So just like water, one of my old professors, I always remember this, it's like, even water, you can drink too much water and die of water intoxication. And it's like, what? It's clean, pure water, it's the way of life. But you have too much of anything, it almost can become toxic. So when nitrogen, lands on a surface and gets into a water body, like runs off where there isn't as much flood protection as the last one, it runs off and it can get into receiving water bodies and end up someplace concentrated. And that's what's happening in the Great Bay. And it can, when excess nitrogen can cause kind of overstimulation of growth, aquatic plants and algae blooms, and then it can stop light from penetrating to deeper waters. So where the eelgrass at the bottom of the Great Bay used to get light, rely on that photosynthesis process, it doesn't get through because of the excess, plant and algae growth, in the water column. So although they're natural occurring elements, they need, they can be pollutants. And soil, one thing about soil, when it absorbs into soil, there's a lot of clay particles in soil, and those are negatively charged, and phosphorus and nitrogen are positively charged, and the soil binds to them. So when it goes into soil, it kind of hangs on. It's not a bond, it's not like a bond that can't be, broken like, easily like this pen, but, it binds, so it can, hold on to it, and it kind of keeps it in there and keeps it where it needs to be, and then it can be used by plants and nitrogen-fixing bacteria. So there's nitrogen-fixing bacteria that transform nitrogen gas from the atmosphere and in soil into fixed nitrogen compounds such as ammonia that are usable by plants. So these microorganisms take it, transform it, fix it, if you will, into a form that can be used by the plants for growth. So it's kind of the whole little mini cycle of life, if you will. So you want it on the site. You don't want it all washing away. Another thing that it provides is carbon sequestration. Trees reduce the amount of carbon in the atmosphere by sequestering carbon in new growth, takes in the carbon, and then it holds it in their accumulated tissues. So people say about the carbon emissions, heat trapping, so forth. Trees take that out and sequester it and hold it. Because matter cannot be created or destroyed, it's always there. It's just where does it go, and that excess, when it becomes excessive and concentrated in one place, that's when things start becoming an issue. Mm-hmm. So undeveloped land provides a lot of water and air quality.
The bats.
Also provides, where is it? Oh, did I print this one out? Oh, there it is. Yeah. Wildlife habitat. Undeveloped land is used by many living organisms, from the nitrogen-fixing bacteria that we can't even see, to large mammals such as the black bear and deer and everything in between. Many species, depending on the species, they either need large swaths of unfragmented land where others live their entire lives in a small area. Like, beavers are about, they go about a half mile, their whole life. Unless something happens and they need to relocate, but usually they mark their territory and about a half mile stretch is where they'll be, whereas deer or coyotes will travel, very far lengths to, go where the food is, depending on the season, the environment, what's happening. And so they some creatures need large, unfragmented, and some need small areas. And wetlands, forests, vernal pools, caves, meadows, rivers, and streams all provide habitat for a wide range of species, including, which you may have heard of recently because it is a recognized species here in Exeter, and you can't log, I forget what it is. It's like May 15th to August 15th in certain areas in Exeter because of the northern long-eared bat. And that's him or her right there. So there's a lot of creatures out there that there's living organisms, and we'll get to the benefits of land development later, and there are, it does provide habitat for, for certain wildlife as well, but certainly an advantage of undeveloped land. Another big benefit is biodiversity, and biodiversity can be defined as it's all the different kinds of life you'll find in one area. The variety of animals, plants, fungi, and even microorganisms like bacteria that make up our natural world. Each of these species and organisms work together in ecosystems like an intricate web to maintain balance and support life. And I thought of that was a pretty good picture, because if you look at that picture, it's just, you can't, there's probably a lot of microorganisms on there that you can't see. There might be a lot of them, but we can't see them. But you can see there's a mushroom, and there's probably at least 5 or 6 different types of vegetation there. So it's a diverse ecosystem. It's, the more biodiversity is so the greater your biodiversity, the greater number of plants, fungi, animals microorganisms that you have in a system. And the benefit of the biodiversity, it adds resilience to an area. The more diverse an ecosystem is, the more resilient it is to threats. And one of the examples is a common example that maybe people will recognize is if you go to any, home improvement store and you buy or a hardware store or RJ's or something, you buy grass seed. And you look at the grass seed, you look at the contents of that grass seed. Most grass seed around here it's made up of it's never a single type of grass. It's usually bluegrass, fescue, rye mix. So there's 3 types because they all have kind of different characteristics. And they all, so if a disease comes, bluegrass doesn't do well, is very water intensive. Bluegrass needs a lot of water. So if it's a real rainy summer, then, okay, you could probably get away with, the bluegrass will still stay alive. But fescue and rye are very drought resistant. So if you have a drought year, then, the bluegrass will die off, but you still have grass. You still have predominantly the fescue and the rye. So if you only had one, like a monoculture, and a disease hits it, it's gone. Another example would be a farmer that just grows corn. And if there's a beetle comes along, I don't know of a beetle that he's going, but say a beetle comes along and destroys the crop, then the farmer's whole livelihood is destroyed. If he has, corn, beans, soybeans, and, watermelon, and then the corn, he's more resilient. He can still produce, a food product. And that's kind of what the point of biodiversity is. And the more you have, the more diverse the system is, definitely the more resilient it is. Recreation. Everybody kind of probably knows this one. People utilize undeveloped land for a variety of outdoor activities. You got hiking, you got biking, you got bird watching, just children playing, snowshoeing, numerous other activities that can improve people's physical and mental health. And we have a photo. These are all these photos are from Exeter, by the way. Everything pretty much is either an actual Exeter photo or the bat was a bat photo. Really, I think I couldn't find a picture to take a bat. Yeah, I didn't have any bat pictures, or Kristen Murphy didn't share any bat pictures with me that she had.
Shouldn't you add hunting and fishing to that too?
Hunting, fish, yes.
In that list, yeah.
Yeah, all of it. I mean, I just said among,
A lot of partridges and hunting over across the road, yeah.
That's a great point, hunting and fishing.
So
I fish myself, so, that's, I forget, what is that? Dudley Brook. That's Dudley Brook. That's the gas easement. That's the gas, they call it the gas easement trail. And then there's a trail right down there. I forget what Kristen said that was in the bottom right. And then there's our 2 interns from a couple of years ago that were our conservation interns that worked the trails and did a lot of work on our thing. So recreation, everyone knows that.
Yeah.
Before we leave recreation, destruction by those who recreate. That is an added issue, it seems to me. In other words, I don't mean destruction, I mean careless approach toward the land.
Disrespect of the land, yeah.
Yes, this is undeveloped land, which becomes a catch-all for lots of, I'll call it stuff. Is this something that one needs to be, I happen to be treated about it.
Yeah.
Because
It has impacts.
everybody doesn't
Yes.
treat the land the way it
Correct.
needs to be treated.
Yeah. No, absolutely, it's a concern.
And I think
Absolutely.
that's important that when we talk about recreation, that we're talking about creative and not destructive.
Yes.
So that's, I'm not really expressing myself clearly, but when you see degradation of overuse,
Yeah.
So did you ever carve
Yes.
a heart and your
Well,
your
I'm
initials
thinking,
in
I'm
the
thinking
bark?
some of the trails in the White Mountains, which
Oh,
have
no, I
been
know, yeah, sure.
overused
Well,
and.
COVID did a job us in that respect,
Yeah.
because people realize they need to get outdoors and do something.
Well, but that's fine.
And that's
but
a lot of
as
wear and
long-
tear
but
on
as
the old
long as they-
tires, yeah.
As long as they're doing it
Yes.
and treating the
Oh, yeah.
land
Just
as
like,
it should be treated.
just like picking up your trash, exactly, in my mind, yeah.
Yes,
But I think
definitely.
when it comes to planning, like that is really important to think about, because we have, our town has a really great conservation commission and trails committee who goes out there and sort of maintains the trails. And I know, like, I live on, or adjacent to the Oaklands Forest Ridge kind of area, that whole town forest. And those trails get heavily used, and the trail committee or others who are stewards of those trails will go out and close sections of the trails when they're getting overused so that they can kind of regenerate themselves. And they'll put like different markers up and stuff. So I think we need to continue supporting those efforts.
And they
Really
do,
Absolutely.
every conservation meeting, they have a trail report, and they talk about anything that they're concerned about, and there's a lot of stuff that's come up, I won't drag it out, but they're really aware of, there are people out there from the Conservation Commission out there all the time, walking, keeping an eye on things,
Well, Jolly Rand is an example,
so.
Yep.
it seems to me. You're not walking quite as much as you used to, though.
Twice a day, yes, I am. You're just not looking when I'm out
But I
there.
mean, but that's another one that is subject, I think, to overuse. And it's not, or it's not good use. Maybe that's another way of phrasing it. I'm sorry, I don't mean to.
It's a great point, because as this goes on, because everything we do, humans do has an impact. I mean, if you walk across, if you just walk through the woods, not even on a trail, you impact something.
Oh, you
right?
sure do.
But we have to be here, right? So yeah, it's like, you disturb something. But I think the point is how do we do it responsibly and sustainably, so when it's done, it kind of mimics all the benefits that we used to have to the extent we can have it, so it can continually regenerate those benefits for future generations. So that's it's perfect. It really is. It's a perfect example of kind of what we're kind of, kind of getting to here.
I'm a little ignorant here. Do we use signage at the trailheads? Because if you saw the same message, I'm thinking back to the time of in Washington, the subway, see something, say something. So if every time you enter, please take care of our trail, and wherever you see it, you got the same message. So that might sink into some people, but I don't know. And of
Yeah,
course,
I
it costs
know,
money.
not that long ago, somebody was lost with their dog, and they were found quicker because they remembered a specific sign. So there are trail signs out there.
Yeah.
And they try to make
Carry in,
them,
carry out.
unique,
Yeah.
Carry in, carry out, yeah.
so
All right.
people remember them.
Sorry,
No, nothing. No, it was
No,
great.
it is important.
That's what this is about.
Yeah.
I'd rather have dialogue
Yeah.
instead of just standing here. Regulates temperature. This is a pretty big one. A lot of people don't really think about it, but trees, other type of vegetation, it provides shade, it keeps soil and water at a lower temperature. And needed shade, for example, for vernal pools from getting too warm to support species that rely on cooler water temperatures. So vernal pools are mostly in wooded settings and they're shaded. And you usually rely on water temperature as a key factor. So if you take all the trees around a vernal pool, and then that vernal pool can go up 15, 20. I mean, this is what it says from EPA. Trees and vegetation lower surface and air temperatures by providing shade and through evapotranspiration. Shaded surfaces, for example, may be 20 to 45 degrees cooler than the peak temperatures of unshaded materials. So it can have a pretty dramatic effect on the water temperature and the ground temperature, and that affects all of the microorganisms we were talking about, the wildlife that it has, and the aquatic life that relies on cooler water temperatures. And perfect example, these nice tree canopy covered brooks. Those brooks, if those trees probably keep that, depending on about what's above it. I mean, if there's development above it for, and there's not a tree on a bank for, 20 miles until it gets here, well, it probably is not going to lower but continuously, if it's continuous like that, it will keep that water temperature much lower, and all your cold water species like trout and salmon and so forth will have a chance to thrive and live year round in these areas. And if you take that shade away and that water becomes 72, 75 degrees during the summer, the cold water species can't survive. So they can survive, 10 months out of the year, but then that month, then they're not going to survive, so they can't spawn and regenerate, and so that happens to a lot of trout and salmon streams that used to be trout and salmon streams no longer are, because of the tree canopy that's been removed and the resulting increase in water temperature. Another benefit, low cost of tax base. Undeveloped land uses little, if any, public services. There's no, maybe trash to pick up. I meant municipal, waste management doesn't go there and pick up bins. There's no kids in the school system being generated from it. There's very little or no traffic generation. There's some traffic generation for people that go there if it's a large enough area that people go there to recreate or, hike or whatever. But the physical site itself generates zero traffic. There's no traffic being, as compared to a fast food restaurant. That generates a ton of traffic coming and going, where this doesn't generate hardly any. There's no public utilities. It doesn't use water. It doesn't use sewer. It doesn't call the police or the fire departments. It doesn't file lawsuits, so you don't have the trees coming in. Well, a lot of doesn't file law. And DPW doesn't have to plow it, salt it, or sand it. And when I said file lawsuits, I mean that is an expense that land people that own land do get in the legal system, and it is an expense that we don't have with things. So while the value of undeveloped land is lower than developed land, it does generate taxes, but requires little to no service in town. Not getting into current use, because that's kind of a different situation, but a lot of the land, I use an example, and I don't want to use any in-town examples, but I used one example in Somersworth when I was there. There was a property that really, the beautiful property right on a pond in town, and it was undeveloped, and it was valued at, I think the value was about $1.2 million, and it was vacant. It was undeveloped land. And a lot of people in town hey, we need to get this developed, let's get this developed. And I was like, yeah, we can do that. But right now, they had about, at the time, it was the tax rate was a little over $30. So it was bringing in about $45,000 worth of tax revenue every year. So it's a $45,000 cash positive piece of property. You can't say that about many properties. Probably everyone owns property here. I don't know how much you pay in taxes, but it's probably less than $45,000 for the property. And you have impacts. You get trash. DPW does salt, sand, plow, your roadway in front of your house. You may use police, fire departments. So it's not only, it's a low cost to the tax base, and any money you get in is usually a cash positive. So I'm not saying you keep it all. That's not the point, what I'm saying, but I'm just saying it doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't cost the town anything to have undeveloped land. Some cases, if it's under current use, and it's, you get $700 of taxes out of it when it should be, $300,000 or something like that, that's a different situation, where if you get one police call, it might, break even. But it's not going to cost you.
Does size make any difference?
Yeah, as far as value?
Well, the size of the undeveloped land.
Well, maybe, but basically the first acre is kind of the most important in frontage. So you can have some parcels out there that are 20 acres that are vacant in Exeter, depending on their location, are valued less than, say, a half acre vacant, well, not that we have these, but a half acre vacant lot, on High Street,
Yeah.
that you could put a single family home development that has water and sewer in front and sidewalk. I mean, that could be a couple $100,000, where the other parcel out on the other side of town might be 180. So it's not, I wouldn't say it's always correlated, but generally, the larger the parcel, you do get assessed more, but it depends on location and what services are available.
When you're saying undeveloped land, are you including farmland?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
But I'm going to say, Dave,
That's a good question. I mean, I do. We don't have a lot of it, but, like Rain's Barn, I include that because it provides, well, I don't know if we have do we have the New England Cottontail on Rain's? It's kind of the habitat. Maybe it's a little bit low. It's not successive.
Pretty low number.
Yeah, it's a little low. Usually it's succession, and there's some trees growing up for that, but they're around this way. But it provides, habitat. It provides all the benefits that we talked about. Recreation, everything, low cost to the taxpayers.
do wetlands have some effect on the taxing of 100 acres, for instance?
Yes, you can go and talk to my understanding is you can go and talk to the assessor, because it's about what the land value is, what it's worth, what it's worth. And if it's all wet, and it definitely diminishes the potential, then there is a deduction for that. So another thing it does, it provides all of the materials for items we use every day. Everything around us comes from the earth. Everything. Every way you look, it's something that started out as an element or on a tree, and then it goes through various chemical processes and forms, this pen, right? So it's all compounds from the environment. So I wanted to do some math, because I told you we were going to do some math.
Okay.
And I did a little bit. Does anyone know how many square miles is the Earth?
How many square miles, excuse me?
All right, how many square miles the Earth's surface is? Is 197 million square miles.
Okay.
That might sound like a lot, and it is, but again, it's finite. And of that, 71% is water. So the remaining is 57,268,900 square miles of land, which represents 0.07 square miles per land per person. 0.07 square miles, or 46 acres, the size of the Rose Farm project. So everyone, think of every one person, okay, has that much land, and that's where they have to get all their stuff they use. Everything has to come from that piece. If anyone uses more than that, then it's at the impact of someone else. Yeah. And we can't use more than can be regenerated. So a lot of things are like biodegradable, While matter cannot be created or destroyed, humans can change its forms, which can take a very long time to break down back to its original state. For this pen, for example, if I take this pen and I throw it outside, and it'll go into and then 250 years from now, someone walks by and digs it up, it's going to look like this. They take the chemicals that were naturally occurring and dispersed in the environment, it goes through a chemical process, and they put it into a bond that cannot be easily broken. I mean, yes, they could take it to a lab and, for $1,000 maybe, break this down back to the elements it came from, but no, that's kind of the idea of recycling, but, the recycling, a lot of it doesn't get done because it's just so expensive. So it ends up in a landfill, but it's getting removed from the environment. So you don't have this for whatever the life of this is until it finally breaks down into the chemicals that were originally, used to put it together.
That's an interesting thought.
Yes.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought of that. Now I'm thinking of that every time.
That's good for elementary school.
I told you we're going to do some chemistry. It's all chemistry. I mean, everything is chemistry. Everything is made up of that elemental chart is a combination of those things in different bonds to create a different item. And everything we use, from clothes, the bed you sleep in, the bed frame, the headboard, the wood headboard, is from the trees. The clothes you wear, from the cotton and the polyester, and some is synthetic, some are natural, but they're all natural to begin with. They just synthesize them, and they're called synthetics because they take them and they put them together, and they're like a man-made compound that doesn't exist naturally in nature.
I've thought of all of those things except the pen.
Yeah, except the pen. And then, of course,
you.
all our food. So that's what undeveloped land does. I mean, once, a parking lot doesn't provide that, it takes away that. And then finally, I thought I'd, just talk about, it provides, what I called it emotions. People feel connected to open space. It relieves stress, it improves overall well-being, and for example, who doesn't remember a place outside from when they were a kid? I think everyone kind of remembers a place maybe that they used to play, or, so outdoors has a very, very strong connection to people. People that live in urban dwelling, need to, when they get out and, that's why they have parks, because they need, people need that connection, need that open space, and provides a lot of, physical and mental health well-being, in my opinion. And I saw you, Gwen, looking
I
at...
can't tell what that is.
Well, that...
Is it a hut?
Where is that? That my backyard?
I thought, because who remembers a place outside when they were a kid? This is...
Is that your place when you were a kid?
That was, I wasn't quite a kid.
Oh, this was the place.
But there's my backpack, there's my bedroll, this is the house I lived in for 2 years.
Out in Colorado. That's what
Good
it
for
looked
you.
like.
Is that earthen?
It is all from we didn't even have a saw, so everything I could pick up.
Yeah.
And then I figured I had these two trees next to each other, and when we'd find deadfall to break them, you put them in between the two trees, and then two of us would use the leverage at the end and snap it how long you want it. So I thought that would be a little.
Oh, it's great.
Everyone has a connection.
I had no idea that's what that looked like.
We built
You
something
told
like
me
that.
that story.
Yeah, I told you that story. So I thought I'd throw it in there. I was like, that's so everyone has a connection to the
Yeah,
outside.
we built things like that with pine boughs. A quick one.
Well, that's what it was. It was, it was hellebore leaves.
Okay.
It was wood, deadfall, laid against, and then hellebore leaves, and then mud, and then pine boughs. That was, that's, in the pine boughs you can see on the top.
Yep.
But it was hellebore leaves, mud, and then pine boughs.
But it burned, right?
Yeah, I burned it down, but
burned it.
that's a story for another day.
Okay.
Well, I had a fire pit inside, so it was bound to happen someday. So, did I miss anything? What benefits does undeveloped land provide to you that may not have been articulated tonight? Does anyone think?
I mean, I think what I was thinking as you were going through that is it was like, well, the virtue of the undeveloped land, well, part of it is that it's undeveloped, so it's not contributing to water and air quality. Like, if you build a house and grow grass, then you're fertilizing your grass, and that's contributing to your pollution. So the more we develop, and you're cutting down the trees and doing all that. So the fact that it's undeveloped, I think, is just, it's also, not only is it doing all these good things, but it's also not doing the bad things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we'll get to that. Yeah, that's exactly. That's because the trick is, and the reason why I start with this, is the trick is when developed land, I mean, that's going to happen. I mean, in the way our whole system is set up, and property rights are very strong in the United States, and the reason for a lot of our wealth and prosperity and financial success in this country follows that from growth and land use development, and I do believe that. So I believe it's going to happen. It's just I think the key is, how does it happen where you can mimic as much of the benefits of it prior? You're not gonna, you can't do it exactly, it can't, but how do you do it? Like, how, not grow grass, do more natural, natural lawn, kind of get rid of the Kentucky, bluegrass, high demand water. It can be less impact. So that's kind of the whole purpose that you said, like, how do we do development and in a better way to be more sustainable long-term. And there is, like we've done a lot, like with stormwater. In the 70s, when you built the parking lot, you tilted it away from your building.
Yep.
And you just, and if it like went into a puddle, you put a pipe and you piped it to the nearest stream. And the stream, you can still see them today. You walk in a stream and you see this, 36-inch culvert, coming right out. There's a parking lot up there. That's what it was. It was get it away. Get this water away. Water's nuisance, ponding's nuisance. We don't want it. Get it away. Then we realized, well, wait a minute. All these benefits of this, oh, that's gone. You've taken everything and now you woof. And now the downstream people that used to, have a nice, they used to go somewhere and enjoy the edges of the river, now all of a sudden the water keeps getting higher and higher every year, and erosion, and it starts affecting people's property downstream, and it's like, wait a minute, this is bad, so we have to mimic more of this. So that's why all this infiltration, that's why we change our stormwater regs to underground gravel wetlands. Mm-hmm. Underground gravel wetlands supply air quality benefits, water quality benefits, wildlife habitat, so we start to mimic these things. So we can do, there is out there, we can do a better job, but what do we do to save those? I mean, that's a great point, so.
I'd say too, the balance between man and animal life. I mean, you look at what we used to call a swamp and get all muddy and splash in there and that kind of stuff, but the people are living there, that's their home, You got the woods, and the deer are very curious. When we were doing harvest, went down in there, you couldn't see any, after a snowstorm, you couldn't see any undisturbed land. The deer had been all everywhere. Who's messing with our house here? Really. And so there's a balance there that we have to work with,
exactly.
Along with just,
Yeah, it is.
How do we do it? Property, believe it or not.
How do you want it done? Where do you do it? Where do you do it? How do you do it?
Yep.
Well, those are the things, to maintain those benefits, at least from a point of that we can keep going and keep be sustainable in the long term, be sustainable in the long term. Because that's what our master plan calls for. I mean, many people, about being sustainable, about, living, basically within the carrying capacity that we have.
I know it's not our neighborhood, but I got to reflect on the Big Dig in Boston. And now there's a beautiful, about
Rose Kennedy
2-mile
Greenway.
wooded area. And honestly, you can get in there. It's not that big, but it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And you're in a city, and yet you're in a nice wooded area that changes as you walk, so it's a great walk from South Station to North Station.
Yeah.
Safe walk, and everybody's out there having a good time. So that's how man has brought that back.
Yeah, we're in the process of,
So
we're realizing maybe what we did for a while, and with the new technology and the new information that, and science and so forth is all feeding this. And so now it's like, okay, what are our regulations say? How can we move forward in the most responsible manner? So,
Are aesthetics emotions? In other words,
I don't know. That's up to you. Is it? You can answer that for me.
No,
if it is
but
to you.
I'm saying that if you've taken you've taken emotions and made it into another criteria, if you will.
A benefit. Yeah.
Benefit.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a benefit.
Now, are aesthetics, because for me, the aesthetics of undeveloped land, well, what we're doing to so-called undeveloped land. I'll give you an example, Tenny Mountain Highway. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that, out of Plymouth. I find a little troubled by the significant number of, I like to call them windmills, but they're not. They're power generators.
Yep, turbines.
That aesthetics,
Yes.
that land is undeveloped, probably undevelopable.
For 20 years, anyway.
Well, no, but I mean, it's,
Yeah.
but it's, again, our aesthetics part of the emotion.
That's the way I saw it, because emotions are like, okay, it relieves stress. And I think anybody who has like, I used to love, I like, in my bedroom, I loved looking out at the, and seeing the ocean in my old place. I loved the trees right behind, the trees in my yard. It was nice. It was aesthetics, but it provided me with just, I just enjoy it. It felt connected. And that's why a lot of people I don't blame a lot of people that when development happens near them, they're very emotional about it because they have that connection. That's, they walked in those woods, they look at them every day, and it provides a value and a benefit to them. So it's understandable they get upset.
All right, then let me ask another question. I want us to think about the process of bringing power from Canada through northern New England.
Okay.
That's all undeveloped land. But somehow, can we make an argument that it needs to be used? I'm just throwing that out.
Oh, I know.
No.
I'm just like, oh, wow, boy, did he open one up.
Sit on my hand.
Think about this in the context of.
Is it better with wires or wind or turbines?
Well,
Where's the energy?
let me
Yeah,
ask
is
you
it a
put it that
gas
way.
line? I mean, what are you doing?
okay, but again,
What are we talking about?
undeveloped land has uses.
Yes. Benefits, uses,
Well,
all of the above.
we're now lost in
I
semantics.
don't mind the turbines in the daytime. It's those blinking red lights that drive me nuts. Because we didn't have them before.
If you
We
were-
got them on Antrim,
But if you were a bat, you'd be disturbed by the turbines.
probably.
Yeah.
I'm not close enough to hear them. But
No, I'm sorry,
Yeah, no,
But I-
well, this was discussion. We're on discussion and next
If
step,
we're
so.
going to try to think about this, there's some uses, good uses of undeveloped land. How about that? No, nobody?
Oh, absolutely.
Of course.
No, that's what, yeah.
But we haven't said, have we said that here? Maybe we have.
We haven't
and I
gotten
just-
there yet. That's
we
why
haven't
this is
gotten-
a
all right.
planning series.
All right, okay.
So don't take this as like, because some people might say, oh, undeveloped land is so great, let's just not develop land. That's not what this is about. It's providing a solid foundation and a solid, a foundation of learning, a framework to, when you look at land use regulations and you look at the impacts of them or the results of them, you have this kind of,
think about this too.
these kind of things in mind. So I think it's important to know these things, but it isn't to say, okay, now we're just gonna,
Finding the
shut it down. I mean, that's not
I've
what
gotten
this
ahead
is
of where-
about.
where
I
we-
just
where
think
we
it's
were.
about a whole, because next steps will be on the benefits of land development. I mean, land development has a ton of benefits that we're all, enjoying, we've enjoyed today, and we will continue to enjoy tomorrow, and we've enjoyed our whole lives. So, it provides a place to work, to live, it's endless. Provides all the materials and the things that you like to use, and it gives you this pen so you
The
can
old
write down.
pen.
Yes, because the manufacturer had to be built to be able to create the lab to make these. So, there's a ton of benefits to it. So this is just, we're building on that. We'll get to that. But I'd just like to ask, did anyone learn anything today, and was it helpful?
absolutely. Several years ago, I went to a workshop for a week down in down in Hudson area. We were there for a week studying the woods. Everything from the surface up, and because we're looking at from a harvesting, lumber managing kind of tree management perspective. We didn't look underneath the earth, didn't look at that. We didn't talk about wetlands, so this has been very good in terms of broadening my perspective there, and I think your example of the pen is wonderful.
Yes, thank
This thing
you.
is never going to go away
Long time.
Yeah, it's like-
Yeah.
with the single-use plastic bag. Send those to Trex, because they make bitches.
Yeah, well, I know. That's why I usually use pencils. But I just got these. I usually use pencils. I got like 4 broken ones in my office.
I'll have to make sure I start using them at the office.
So, yeah, very helpful.
Yeah, it's been great. Actually, David, if each series progresses like this one, I'm looking forward to what Exeter TV is going to do.
Yeah, good.
Because honestly, I could see doing something at the town hall with families with children to help
Yeah.
educate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think it's just an adults who vote and who need to make decisions. This could be a family thing
Yeah.
that kids could come to and learn and, yeah.
Yeah, this is, I mean, I envisioned, I've been kind of, it's a little fluid, but I really want to get the engagement piece down well with this, kind of that, and I'm strategizing. I think we're going to try to do some key informant interviews. We'll go through an exercise that I think is pretty cool to identify key informants in the community, like people that are, well-known in the community, that people might listen to and so forth. So instead of trying to go out and contact, the impossible 16,423 people, you kind of contact key informants and that permeates in, and then they invite folks and so forth. So I guess long story here, is exactly, yeah, I would love to, because the schools, the youth, get people involved. So when we do an outreach of what we're doing and how we're going about it and why we made the decisions, I'm going to try to pull a lot of people in. So
I can see this is a
I
great
can see that, like it's synthesizing
Okay.
it, but it's just not yet. It's like
Oh, no.
get the foundation
Yeah.
knowledge for all you folks, and maybe get the mind thinking, okay, because we're going to go over density, we're going to go over height, and so forth. So
Well, the emotions touched, because I remembered things that I hadn't thought of in years about how much time I used to spend out in the woods at the academy, or through
Exactly.
town, right?
Yeah.
And whatever, so, yes, it was important to add those elements, and
Yeah.
thank you.
So good. So question and answer time. Last
Okay.
time I left you with a question. Anyone remember what the question was without reading it? Okay.
Say I should have written it
I ask a
down.
question each time.
I asked you for an assignment, should have sent.
What is the tallest building in Exeter and how tall it is? And I asked that question and I did not know the answer to it. And a few people, I heard throughout some suggestions on what it is, but I researched it to find out what it is, and it's a tie. It looks like it's a tie.
Church?
Well, I don't count the
You're not-
steeples, like town hall, the spire. That
Yeah.
probably
No,
might be higher than, but it's,
Not the church.
America,
Here,
Okay.
I'll get it.
We got it.
good catch.
I'm gonna call it a tie. It's
Just swinging back and forth to
Okay.
it.
the back side of the Exeter Hospital
Okay,
is up on top of the hill next to the emergency room,
Yeah.
and the PA library, and they're both
Yeah.
about 80
didn't
feet.
think of the library, but
What about the science
Okay.
building? Even
I
though-
tried to pull plans to get the exact, but then I did shoot it, and I got an angle and a pace,
Okay.
And I think the Exeter Hospital's got it
That's how you
by
measure the height of
like
trees.
a
How
foot,
about that?
but they're 80 feet, so they're about 80 feet. And when we go out at height, we'll go take a look at that, because one thing cool about height, it's, to me, and I'd like to see other people's reactions, it provokes a feeling depending on where it is and what it's surrounded by. So like tonight, I went out and I looked at them again, and when I went before, that's why I looked at them, and you stand next to an 80-foot building, and you're like, oh, wow, this is, you get right close to it, But then you walk away, and you turn around on Elliott Street to get back in the car, and you see it, and from a distance, it doesn't look that big. And then when you hop in your car and you drive, and there was a building right here that I thought used to be tall, that's tall when I walk out to my car, but it looks small to me, because I was, you know what I'm saying? It's like, it's so relative, and it's just
all
like,
about context.
Exactly. It's just like, wait a minute, that building was tall, now it's small. Like, how, and then tomorrow, a week will pass, and I'll walk out, and that building will be tall again.
Well, PEA science buildings in that swale, partly to have a taller building, but not look so tall. course, they had water underneath, but yeah.
Yeah. So
That's a fairly tall building, yeah.
the new question is, what is the densest single-family home subdivision in Exeter?
Oh,
So we'll get to why, and these questions, like, you'll realize what they mean at the end. Like, through the series, we're gonna go through height, density, and you'll understand all that. But single-family homes, not a multifamily structure, but
Oh,
the single-family home subdivision. What's the densest,
Mobile
meaning?
home parks don't,
Yeah, mobile homes
because
don't,
that's not a subdivision, a mobile home park?
No, single-family homes.
Single-family.
That would be manufactured, that's what I would call manufactured
Okay.
housing. So, single-family home, family standalone, not in a manufactured housing park. What is the and what I mean by the densest is units per acre. Like, how many units per acre?
Okay, I got a couple.
And what it is. So, and I don't know the answer to that. I think I got,
Should we put out guesses now, or are you doing?
if you have guesses, give them to me now.
out loud,
behind
Exeter
Walgreens.
Farms.
That 13
Yeah,
unit
JD.
Ooh, Exeter Farms.
used to be,
Okay.
oh God, Bucky Rose property. Used to be
JD
Bucky Rose
Hill.
Garden.
Where?
You know where the Rose House
Yeah, I
is
got
on?
JD Hill, I got
Yeah.
Exeter Farms. Do I have
Behind
anything
that,
else?
They have a little barn, and behind that.
Yes, I remember
What's the
where.
area that was
homes in there.
leading to the, and now I can't even,
Move ahead, my friend.
no, I've lost it.
Okay.
Okay. All right, well,
That's good.
those are good guesses. We'll find out, stay tuned for the answer on April 27th.
I think you gotta do multiple homes too, because I think it's the new pocket neighborhood that Academy's building.
But those aren't
Not
single
yet.
family.
Those are multifamily, but you,
No, multifamily. Yeah, I didn't, no,
Right,
it's
I
not
think-
multifamily.
I know that, but I think you need to include that too, because that's the one I think is gonna become
Westwood,
the largest.
West Side Drive is the only other one.
That-
JD Hill, West Side Drive.
Oh,
I mean, I can't think of, JD Hill was a massive building project, but so wasn't Charter Street and that whole area, that was all developed.
Those are, Arthur,
This single family, they were all three,
Well-
if I remember my history correctly, there were three businessmen who bought it to build housing for the mills that were coming up in that side of town.
Like Cass Street is pretty close together, those homes. Those have been there for years.
Yeah, but those,
But
that's a pretty old neighborhood.
that's not a development
Charter
per se.
Street
Could be.
Development. Charter Street was literally built as the tinier,
That's good.
smaller,
Yeah,
single
yeah.
families like JD Hill.
Yeah, and then one thing I've been doing, that's why I probably have my own guesses, that's why I have my own guesses now, is I've been going, I'll show, it's gonna take a while to do, but I've been driving, and I've driven everywhere in Exeter, I think, by now, and just to look, and I've been making it a point to drive every neighborhood, and I'm taking all the characteristics of the neighborhood, like, do they have a sidewalk, do they have closed drainage, open drainage, is there grass panel, no grass panel, and so forth, and kind of different characteristics. Does it have a bridge? Does it not have a bridge? There's different characteristics. Kind of neat to you can kind of understand. You're like, oh, okay. You can almost place each one in a certain time frame based on the regulations. You're like, oh yeah, this is when they allowed 32-foot wide roads.
Right.
So
Exactly.
those days are luckily over. But it's like an airstrip.
neighborhood.
Yeah. And then wow, that was the horse and buggy was like
Yeah, where I live.
So it's very interesting. We'll do it. I
Yeah.
plan on a couple of field trip or two. I'm gonna
when was it built too? And also,
get the rec bus.
anything after the Second World War?
I don't know where I lived.
Remember.
It was an original mill building.
It's Levitt,
Cookie cutter homes.
yeah, Levittown, perfect example, not here, but that's as much as you can cram into a potato field.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So unless anyone has anything else, that's all I got for tonight.
One
Go ahead, Lynn.
suggestion. This all reminded me of a movie that I saw at the music hall a couple of years ago called The Biggest Little Farm. And I think it's a movie everybody should see.
What's the name of it again?
It's called The Biggest Little Farm.
Biggest Little Farm, okay.
And it's a documentary, and it's based in California about a couple who moved to this wasteland in California that had been a peach farm, I think, like acres and acres and acres of peach trees, and the soil had dried up. It was basically destroyed, and the trees had all died. The ground was useless. And these people moved to this farm because they wanted to raise their own vegetables, and they wanted to, she was a chef, and she wanted to be able to provide her clients with food that she had raised. And they transformed this just godforsaken place into the most amazing, magical area you could ever imagine. You just can't even imagine what it looked like.
Yeah.
And it was all they had a guru who was kind of guiding them through. It was like a 7-year process, but kind of letting nature take its course. You know, you had a snail infestation, so you let the geese go loose and they take care of the snails. You let the coyotes come in because they'll get rid of other pests that are becoming a nuisance. Everything that was a nuisance was balanced out by something that they just allowed to come onto the property. And at the end, they had soil that was as black and rich as you could possibly want. And it survived floods, like areas around them flooded, and because of the soil conditions, because of the vegetation, the water was taken care of on the property. And it was just all about balance, and it was a beautiful story, and you could see everything get transformed in front of your eyes over the course of this hour-long, maybe hour-and-a-half long documentary. But it was, I highly recommend it.
Well, there's the homework for next.
There's the homework.
There's your
You can
homework
find
for next
it.
time. And then you had 2.
And I have a question for you. With all that's going on now with the EPA, with PFAS, this doesn't really have anything to do with what we talked about today, but it kind of brought me back to car washes and other facilities that may be using products that have PFAS in them. Are we able to address that? I mean, I don't think legally we can do anything, but have we talked to any business owners, like car wash people, about what they use for products in their car washes? And
the only no, there's been a couple car washes through here. We didn't really have that conversation in Naria. We did with Circle T.
Yes.
But it was, it seemed like that might be the older ones, because the new, we don't regulate it.
I know we don't.
That's regulated at a larger scale, or, state,
that.
feds, they need certain permits and chemicals and so forth, and how you use them. I mean, I think technology's gotten better, but I don't know about the modern, the modern car wash, because remember Circle T described their process. It sounded pretty. They recycle the water. And they recycle everything. I mean, nothing even leaves the site. It goes into a chamber, and they use the water again, and filter it and so forth. So it was kind of recaptured, and it uses very little water compared to the older ones, so they don't use as much. But not to say it still doesn't have issues, but it seemed like a lot more tighter process. I haven't.
That was your side.
I think,
Because I did hear, though, that was the housing meeting that we were at. Remember that one at Stratham?
Yeah.
After that, I was talking to some people, and I guess Stratham has been experiencing that in their wells. So I don't think it's an issue with the public drinking water. I've never heard it an issue with that. It's the private wells.
I think Hampton has, I heard through somebody at RPC that Hampton has a development that I think is on a community well. I think there are 100,000, not 100,000, I think there are like 900 to $1 million homes, and their well is contaminated. And, some of us have gotten reports back from the testing that they did about a month ago. It was all volunteer, but those of us on private wells were in a study to see whether they could detect any PFAS in it.
And have they tied it to car washes?
No, I just brought it. It just made me think of that, because I think I questioned Nuria, and I don't think I think it was unclear what they were going to use, and I never followed up on it. So I was just curious, just the whole PFAS thing has been coming up recently.
Yeah.
Sununu
yeah.
brought it up.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I was
yeah.
concerned
Remember
about
all
the
the time now,
levels.
plastics all the time have got all those chemicals on.
Yeah, I don't know where it's coming from. I mean, it's just, I never really even heard of it till that meeting, and someone started talking about it. I was like, what? What's going on?
Yeah.
So, yeah, so.
They're out there.
Definitely worth looking into. I mean, if you find any information that can inform what we do here, then, yeah.
Okay.
There's been an effort in Exeter and in Stratham about well testing your own, I had a presentation at the middle school, and that's going on right now, and you had to determine the day of the storm, so they've moved, also you could do it on that following Thursday, so, but it takes something like 6 weeks before you get the results back. But that's a local company out of Portsmouth that's doing that testing, not the state lab. So,
Yeah. Well, it's in more and more wells, unfortunately.
So, well, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Is
Thank
anyone
you.
else?
thank
have
you,
anything?
Dave.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
See you. Yeah, see you. I think we're on for the 13th. I think we have an application coming, so.
Oh, my goodness, an application finally?
Application
We're
finally.
gonna have a little training how to do those again?
Yeah.
Okay.
We had a TRC meeting on it this morning.
Anything master plan or land use regulations, field modifications,
No field mods, no.
no bonding or any money to share with us?
No money to share.
Okay,
No money given, no money released.
all right. Well, I'm open to a motion.
To adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded, we stand adjourned. Whoops.
Not so quick.
Almost there.
Go ahead. Now, we're off the record.
Thank you for tuning in to Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast channels 98 and 22. Channel 98 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 13, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Biweekly Report, with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well.